The breaking point isn't loud. It's the moment you hear yourself admit it.
It was claiming bankruptcy though. And you've got to give up everything you own, everything just goes away.
Failure exposes more than numbers. It exposes you.
When did you know you were the problem? You were the bottleneck.
And when the mask slips, there's nowhere to hide.
But if problems are, I gotta fix the resolution, and now once we resolve it, like, then what?
Rock bottom isn't the end. It's the mirror. Welcome to the Hatch Point today. We have two amazing guests with us. We got Chad from Inside CEO, and then we got Scott, who recently sold Rocky Mountain Lifts and also does the car consulting and quite a few other things. But both of you guys just bring a plethora of knowledge in entrepreneurship and plenty for our guests to be able to learn from tonight. Scott brings structure, deep thinking, and the long game strategy. And Chad leads with energy, momentum, and purpose-driven ambition. So let's just jump into it. And kind of to start off, Chad, you and Scott have been friends for a minute.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us a little intro on Scott?
No, it'd be awesome. So, and thanks for having us, obviously, on the podcast today. Appreciate it. Scott and I, it's funny because you probably can recall better than I can, but essentially we went down to SEMA in Vegas where, all the cars come together and all the different builds and all that stuff. And we had a few mutual friends. And I don't actually remember the exact point where we met. All I remember is at one point in the night, we had all got a huge XL Uber and went to McDonald's and we just became tied really quick. And it was just this funny incident of things that was one after the other. And there was kind of this joke between all of us that at the time, my girlfriend and I said, oh, but this guy's going to marry us one day. And just totally messing around. And then really after time and time that we just became really close, he married us. So it was a crazy deal, but you recall better than me. Your mind is better than mine. How did it all transpire?
So it all started at McDonald's?
It really is. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing the relationship you can build off a double cheeseburger as a foundation, though. So yeah, that's pretty much what it was. It was probably one of those 2:00 in the morning, right on Las Vegas Boulevard, and next thing you know, he did. He had said like, we're gonna get married by you, and I was like, oh man, I don't know about that's a lot of pressure. But I tell you what, man, for like $2.99 online, you can definitely become a clergyman, and that's what happened though. So yeah, so.
And you and I, we had, after that point, obviously, just a lot of conversations and a lot of different times where, going out to different races and meeting up at friends' houses. But I was drawn to you because I felt like your work ethic was just insane. There was so much that you were doing, and I could tell that it was just, if you said you were going to do it, you did it. And I envied that a lot because I didn't have a lot of those things growing up and knowing that this is what you do in life, or this is how you get here. But always thinking that watching you make something happen and seeing, something that's my same age at the time, or we're still always the same age, but seeing that you could do so much blew me away because I really had not seen that to that point.
That's awesome. And I couldn't have scripted it even better, but you forgot that I was better looking than you too.
True, yeah.
So I think it was also the beard thing that really brought us together.
Yeah, but guys,
Well, I asked him on that. So I want to know what you guys think. What I have found, especially as I've paid attention, is not only are my circles this, but this is like the more I pay attention to it, this is where I'm aiming. And my values have a lot to do with subconscious judgment and acceptance. And like I'm learning more about that as I keep evolving. But I'm drawn to those who have similar values. Otherwise, you trigger me, and I don't want to be your friend.
Yeah, it's amazing how you can literally have a 5-minute conversation with just about anybody, right? Or you hear somebody talking, and next thing you know, you can tell right away. You're like, all right, that person's on the other side of the room. I can vibe with that guy or that gal or something like that, And it's whether they call, the angels in the sky or whatever, I don't know, whatever it is. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But there is something that definitely attracts like-minded people, and I think, whether that's in sports and if it's in whatever, I've always had the mindset of kind of being a chameleon, everything's a sell process, but at the end of the day, there's a lot more of it, to it as well. When you really start talking to people and they just kind of get it, there's a lot of people, and we're talking about business, right? So there's a lot of people that want the American dream of starting a business or have run a business. And, but there's differences in those type of people as well. There's people that are wanting to put it in. There's people that have, even somebody that's not even a successful business person, if they put in the effort, that person I can relate to sometimes more than the person that says, hey, I took over the business from my mom and dad. My dad ran it for 30 years and this and that. I mean, that person doesn't have the same grit and drive that, we're talking about. So
like, thank you, universe, for giving me that. Exactly. Thank you for making me figure it out so I don't have to figure it out from a position of it all being figured out for me.
Well, and I think too, like, I got karma and everything like that on my arm. I mean, the thing about it is just, people attract to each other automatically.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things.
It's amazing when, again, even now, let's just say that since we're on this position of being somewhat seasoned as entrepreneurs, but that time building up to that was very much can I read this person? Can I see where they're at right now? What's happening? And I'll tell you, there's guys that I've met before that have been doing this 15, 20 years longer than us, or maybe just they've had more experience than me. And they read through me so quick. And it's just, but they see where I'm at. And it's not read through me in a bad way. It's just I can tell this is where you're at right now. I know where you're at in the level. But when you have guys like that just clicks and it's going, I don't have to do it right now. But you feel it. You feel it in them. It's a weird thing.
Yeah. Well, what Scott said is you just know. So if you talk to someone and they're like starting a new thing or they're in a thing, it's just the way you use your words to describe what you're doing, how you're handling the problems, what problems mean. Because if problems are a problem, shit. But if problems are, I got to fix the resolution, and now once we resolve it, like, then what?
Yep.
It's just a stark difference between the two. Yeah. And so I find that those who need to be lifted, I don't know, it's interesting as we get older, and I think business has done this for me a lot. We take off the mask of like trying to help everyone so we can actually help everyone in a way that would actually help them and not just cripple them. And so I think it's just everyone needs to empower themselves and we support each other. But frankly, I don't want to be hanging out with people who are not doing it already. I just don't have enough time. Right. Like I will be kind. I will give you the same energy. You're just not going to enter the circle.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and again, I think that as you're talking about people that are in business, we may not have known it, but even at a younger age, we're problem solvers. We're the ones that go, I'm going to figure this out. I want to do this. I want to do this. Even if it's just initially in our lives of, hey, we're going to build this go-kart or we're going to build this, whatever. And that transpires into more and more things. But we find as we're seeing the problems out there, I always like to call it problem situations, because whatever the situation is, that means I can create something around it to surpass whatever that barrier is. So, thinking about things that you've done, do you mind giving us just a little bit of a history of how you got into the auto industry and kind of where that took you in the beginning of what you'd say would be your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah. Just to touch on what you're saying, problem solvers, it's interesting because I've always said, like, all business cards that are made that says, head janitor, and things like that, because at the end of the day, I mean, we're, as business owners, we're nothing more than just overpaid problem solvers, really, at the end of the day. I mean, whether it's for your employees, whether it's for your customers, whether it's for, whatever it is. And that's honestly, I think, what drives a lot of people to it. Anybody can sell a product, but it's the problem solving that I think we all chase. We chase that high.
100%.
So very much so. Yeah.
Now you want to get paid more money, solve bigger problems.
Well, of course. And that we want to buy a lot more cool shit. I mean, we're all about that. Yeah. So I got in the automotive industry when I was pretty young. As a kid, I was that kid that had, the Lamborghini, Countach on my wall and stuff like that. I mean, I always liked cars and everything, but never, I didn't grow up in an influential family or anything, where we had a nice car or anything like that. So, so as I got older, I took a job with a local tire shop here in town and started working for them. Was at the bottom of the barrel, sweeping floors, stuff like that. Got into doing tire tech business, and then had an opportunity where the guy that was doing the alignments at another shop, and I was moving around pretty regularly to the point where people were like, hey, does this guy know how to hold down a job? His resume is going to look like shit. I mean, he's only been there for 3 months and he's moving and and I was like, yeah, well, I mean, in my eyes, I was moving up. Some people can say otherwise, but I feel like I was moving up. And so so I had an opportunity, kind of shadow and alignment tech. Didn't have any kind of formal training. The machine that I was working on had a lot of cool videos, and I just watched the videos, watched him do a couple things, and then one day he didn't show up to work. So I said, pull the car and I'll give it a shot. Didn't have any tools, didn't have anything. I mean, I went and borrowed tools from the mechanics, which, you know, that's kind of a no-no. I mean, but that's what got me started in it. Had a guy come over who had sold the equipment at one point in time, and, you know, said, hey, if you're ever looking for a job, like you're doing a great job, not having any formal training, let me know. So I took him up on it one day. You know, I was pretty young. I was cocky. I had basically quit my job and had made a phone call on the drive home and said, hey, you said if I ever needed a job. So he got me in contact with a guy that was in the equipment world. You know, I was in the service world, working on cars, doing tires, doing alignments, you know, doing some minor mechanic stuff. So it was a little bit different, but it was still fixing things, you know. So started working for the guy. Had an opportunity to make a good amount of money. Didn't own the company though, but I was promised that basically, you know, the promise of like you could basically run this if you want to, which is great. We got to that time period, and I called him out and I said, I'm ready to run the company, and he says, no, it ain't gonna happen today, buddy. And here I am, young and cocky, got nothing to lose in my mindset, right? Because I mean, I had a new baby, and I had a new house, and I was spending money, and I said, well, I quit then. He's like, okay. I come home with nothing, and my wife looks at me and goes, well, how are we going to make our mortgage in 10 days? I don't know, but I got to go to Office Depot and I got to make some business cards. So I started my first company then.
When was that?
That was probably 2006, I would say. Yeah, 2000, or maybe even 2005, because my oldest was born December 2005. So probably, you know, beginning of 2006. Yeah, I mean, started that in 2006, and
Was that Rocky Mountain or was that?
no, so that would have been Terry's shop equipment though. Yeah, so similar, you know, but didn't have any vendors or anything. We just fixed stuff. Had no plan, had no action. The plan was make money. That's all it was. Didn't know that I needed to start an LLC. Didn't know anything about, you know, minimizing liabilities and risks and anything. Didn't, you know anything about general liability. I mean, it was just kind of a shit show. I mean, looking back on it, if I could go back to my 2006 self and say, what the hell are you doing? I was really lucky. So, I mean, but I think a lot of people start like that. You know, a lot of people start with that passion.
I would even say that those who are the right starting archetype start like that.
Yeah. I mean,
because those who
they
don't
just
start
have-
like that are scared to start.
Yeah, they just have a product, they have a service, but you know, it's the architecture of how the company, as we all would like to say. I mean, it's how it should be set up. You know, I wasn't focused on that. I needed to pay my mortgage.
Yeah,
you know, and that was my drive. I had a kid, I had this, and I had that part in the back of my head that was, you know, everybody was probably, you know, in my head, I thought everybody was thinking we're just waiting for this kid to fail, you know, and I was not going to let any, you know. There was no way. I mean, I would have been scraping pennies off the floor before I went and said, hey, I fucked up. I need help. So, but yeah, that was kind of the start of it though. It was a big thing to be able to go out to some customers, you know, tell them, hey, I can do the work, but I need to get paid right away. First goal, pay the mortgage.
For our listeners who probably don't know you as well as we do, can you speak to some of your recent successes that have come from 2005?
Oh yeah. I mean, we've built, since then, so I just exited out of a company called Rocky Mountain Lifts. Started that back in 2012. Sold to a good group of guys that were looking to get into basically service type industry and things like that. First company that I had really ever kind of sold. Wasn't anything that I was looking to get out of, but I had an opportunity. My kids were moving out and I was looking to, you know, go travel, go do some other things. So pass the torch, and so that's as of real recent, you know, a couple months. So
well, my question, the reason I asked that is when I hear you talk about no LLC, no minimizing cost, problems, paying attention to all the different things that are required for the business to really reach that point, what changed? How do you look at systems? Like, I mean, bro, you're a service dude. You're just like, you're a mechanic. Like, I'm just saying, like, a lot of people may not realize, same with me, the magnitude of the understanding of what it takes to build a foundation and then go polish that thing top to bottom. So it's just like this perfect oiled machine. And now you have all that insight. You go tell 2005 self, like, where do you find, how important are systems for a business to get to a place where anyone would want to buy it?
Man, and that's a good question though, because I thought even at the time when I had put the company up for sale, I thought I was fully ready. I thought I had all the boxes checked, everything like that. And man, I tell you, the guys that came in, I'll give them credit on this. I've learned a lot, and some of the things I've learned were, what other people are looking for isn't necessarily what I'm looking for. And it's always good to probably have like some of that consulting from a different perspective, right? Because P&Ls, paperwork isn't my strong point, but P&L reports are different for everybody. When you're building your reports, when you're building your chart of accounts and things like that, what you look at it and how you expense it out might be to, track your sales revenue, or it might be to track, your service revenue, or, your marketing expenses or your payroll and things like that. But what somebody's looking at to buy it might be a lot more simple. They don't care if you spent, 30% of your revenue on marketing. What they're looking at is kind of more the bottom line side.
They're like, what's the CAC? Like, where can I pay you less, and how can I prove that this is worth less?
Yep. And how do you make sure to, have enough tax write-offs so that you can live off of what you make? We talk a lot about that. I mean, there's guys that think that just because you start a company, well, I can write off everything. Everything's an expenditure. I've talked to a lot of people that say, well, I'm a business owner, so like I can write that off. I can go buy this new boat because I can write it off. And it's like, there's legal aspects that I'm sure somebody could get into, but at the end of the day, the other side of it though too is you first have to be able to afford it to write it off.
Yeah.
I love that. So what's funny about that is I remember there are multiple times in my companies or in family or friends, they come and say, will you donate to this? And if you like squander, they go, well, you could just write it off. I'm like, it's still my money.
Yeah.
I still have to do something with it, but
I still got to have the $100 to give you before I can write it off. If I don't have the $100, then like,
well, that can help me on a tax return anyway.
Yeah.
Right. But, kind of jumping in a little bit, seeing you go from this 2005 version of yourself to today. And I mean, we just went into depth of some, key metrics that people might be listening going, I don't even know what CAC is. I don't even know what this is.
Or did they talk to you about key man syndrome at all?
Key man, those are two bigger words.
Well, because like that's the biggest depletion of valuation is if you leave, what happens?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because you're the icon there. You're the one that everybody, right?
Yeah. And that was something that, and this kind of came about to me more in the range. I wasn't looking at selling the company, but what I was looking to do is take a lot more of my time and spend it doing things that I enjoy to do. At the end of the day, if you build up this massive amount of wealth or you build up this reputation, everything like that, you die tomorrow. Well, what do you have?
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I've always lived the philosophy that, you're here to make money, but then you're also here to live a good life,
They almost feed each other.
Mm-hmm.
So if you stop playing, your drive to work for that freedom, we're like, why am I not so driven today? I'm still driven, but it's like, it's different. It's stale. And you go play a little, you go on vacation, you're like, shit, let's go back to work.
Yep.
Because they feed each other. And when that energetic circle stops, then it can't keep feeding. I mean, I just know this from experience right now.
Well, and at the same time too, I mean, if, they call it goals, they call it anything like that, when I'm hiring sales guys, I always like to know what their habits are. I want to know. I mean, if you got an expensive habit, I want to hire you because I want to help you make the money. And that was always my thing though, is if I went out and said, hey, I'm going to buy this car, that gave me a goal. Now I got to make that payment or I got to pay it off, or that was, whatever it was. Obviously, that probably wasn't the best way and I wouldn't recommend that to everybody that's out there. But figure out whatever your drive is. And if you can feasibly afford to do something, use that as your driving force because, some people say, keeping up with the Joneses is a bad thing. Now, man, if the Joneses is at the top of the hill and you're trying to get to the top of the hill, keep up with the Joneses, bro. You know, I mean, if the Joneses has a boat and you want to own a boat, Joneses has a great family, you own a great family. I mean,
And there's
do
a
it.
difference, right? There's a difference of I want to own the boat or I want to take your boat, right? There's a difference in that where I think that envy comes in where that's can be bad.
Mhm.
Or really with what you're saying is, no, I'm stoked that you have a boat.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like, I want one day too. Like, thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
Yeah, I heard this like 2 days ago, reframed like find the person, the story, the character. If it's like Ray Lewis, that was my football player I liked back in the day. That was a while back.
Dude.
Whoever it is, if it's like Shaun White, or I want to be exactly like Jordan Peterson. Well, what does Jordan Peterson do? How does he act? How does he talk? How does he think? How does Kobe Bryant, how does whoever you're emulating, the Joneses, what did the Joneses do to be the Joneses and go gamify your life and be the character you want to be? As opposed to like what you were saying, the way a lot of people hear that statement is like the envy, the taking. It's more like, no, I see you and I am that too. In fact, I'm going to be that. And so you set the goal and you're like, well, if I'm going to be that, then we're going to do those things. And it's like the flip side of that whole, the Joneses. And I completely agree.
Well, and it always starts off that way. You know, it always starts off with the dream. I tell the story about the Countach, right? I mean, that was the dream. It was the Lamborghini. That was the thing, you know, back in the 90s, right? And then you get to a point where now you start building these dreams that aren't on posters, you know? That's what's really cool though. I mean, we want to talk about like what we really do this for. I mean, it's coming up with those badass trips or those badass things that people just look at you and go, you did that? You're like, oh yeah, man. Like, oh. And who else do you know that did that? Nobody.
Bro, goosebumps.
You know what I mean? That's what we're chasing.
Well, and then there's an experience from that point. For me, like I had to get the things that have been taken away from me, I thought in a divorce or I hadn't acquired yet, to feel like, okay, now I got them. And then I was like, wait, I don't want to tell anyone I have these things. And I was like, oh, now I got to work on that. Like because it's a Joneses thing.
Mm-hmm.
It says, I don't want to be keeping on the Joneses. I don't want to do this thing. But when it becomes for you and it's just for you, then you're like a beacon of light, like a lighthouse to the world saying, make the life you want. And if you got to be mad at me to do that for a minute, sure, I won't know.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know that that's the best like engine fuel, but like there's a whole debacle in this money. I don't want to be a dick rich guy, so I can't have money because I don't want to be like those guys. And so you don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
You can just do it the way you want to do it, for what you want to build, for your family, for the events, and take that story off. Because I don't know if you've ever experienced trying to not make people feel uncomfortable from your greatness.
Oh man, I'll tell you, I go real deep and I'll tell you, man, I've had ADHD since I was a kid. So trying to figure out everybody's perspective of me was like a full-time job for a long time. And yeah, like there was a click that happened, and then all of a sudden I was like, man, fuck this. I can't, you know, I'm sorry if you don't like me. I think if you don't like me, there's probably a reason on your part. But I mean, for me, I can't even keep track of that anymore.
So chameleon and ADD is totally, there's a connection point there, because you would probably, me too.
Yeah. No, we all hit those things.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a question to jump a little bit backwards, but from thinking about 2005 to now, all these little key things that we just hit. So at what point did you realize that you needed to work on yourself so that everything around you would grow?
It's a good question.
Yeah. When did you know
Uh-huh.
that you, I don't like to say it this way, but you were the problem. You were the bottleneck.
Yeah, man, that's deep right there. I think the thing about it for me, you know, if I'm being perfectly honest on it, was, you know, the biggest thing is when I started seeing problems at home. You know, when I started seeing problems at home, it was weird, because when I'm at work, when I was around that stuff, you know, call it chaotic or whatever. I mean, I was, you know, I was able to answer the questions. I was able to solve the problems. When I came home and I couldn't solve those problems easier. And man, I tell you, I mean, I'm not afraid to admit it, but I mean, I've been through counseling and stuff to learn those tools. In business, we learn a lot of tools, right? Some formal, some informal, some, through bankruptcies and things like that. We learn the tools that we need. And that was a tool that I was missing. I was missing a big communication tool. There was a big part of it though that helped me out on my personal, side and then my business side as well, because that tool was able to translate over. And it's funny because when I was a kid, right, everybody talked about going to college. And if you ask people, I think even today, if you say, what are you going to school for? Communications. And I would go, we all know how to communicate. We've all been talking since we were like 2, right? What do you have to go study communications? And I don't know, I've never stepped a foot into college, but I'll tell you one thing though, like if that's what they learn is how to actually do that. I mean, I say I got a PhD from the School of Hard Knocks. I paid for my communications degree.
It's amazing how different that stuff is. But again, I think what kind of to jump back what you're saying is essentially, I look at the aspect of why Insight CEO is important to me is when you're learning to be the CEO of a company, that's one thing. But when it transfers to your life, how am I being the CEO of this situation? But you can't control it the same way. You can be 100% accountable for you. And one thing, this is kind of a different story, but it goes right along with this is at one point, Scott had said to me, and we talked about this last podcast we did, but one thing is that he just, we had all these friends that we were doing different things and nobody wanted to bring their kids or they didn't want kids. And I'm talking to him and he just said, well, why would you even have kids? Like, I want to take them everywhere with me. Like, building this empire to take them with me to do things. And I love that. And you said the same thing.
Dude, I don't even like the things I used to like anymore. Like, I love snowboarding.
Yeah.
It's not that fun anymore. But you know what's really fun? When I go to the lake and I bring my kids. Surfing behind the boat is not that fun anymore. But it's really fun to watch my kids get up on the ski board and smile. And then go surf a little. But like just to go surf or just and that what you're talking about, it's like that gift of like you don't understand till you understand. You have to taste it all the way, or we can't even talk about it.
Yeah, you gotta choose that,
that is actually the truth, because not everyone always chooses that.
Yeah, I think about the time when I was starting to kind of put everything in place and everything. I learned a lot about time management though. And you gotta choose, we choose how much time we spend meeting with a potential client or vendor, things like that. But you also have to choose how much time you dedicate towards your personal stuff too, whether that be family, personal, or just taking time off. I mean, because if you're going to burn yourself out or, you're going to push your family so far aside where the business takes the front seat, well, that's the choice that you made. And that's the, deal you got to live with.
Quality that time, right? Because I've seen that in both of you as well. And hopefully you see it in me, but I think there's that quality of time that maybe it's, somebody says, oh, I'm all about my family, but then they're home with them on weekends and they don't do anything. What's the quality like where it's, even if you only get a half an hour with them, how is that quality with your kid? How would you give that energy to another executive that you sat down with? Or I mean, would you walk in and be like, oh yeah, sorry kids, like, sorry executive, I'm on my phone. No, you're going to give them that attention. Why would we not get that for our kids? Which then bleeds into everything else.
Yep.
And then we're talking about, as you did all these things from 2005, 6 up to now that you've seen all these different things happen, what are you doing to work on yourself now? What does it look like that you're going, okay, I've got to work on myself because I knew I needed the communication. You went to therapy. You knew you needed to do X, Y, and Z time-wise. What else did you do for yourself to get there?
The biggest thing too was just making sure that you enjoy life. We talk about the things that we want to do. It eventually kind of becomes just a gathering of stuff, right? And believe it or not, like we can do a lot of stuff without stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, right?
No, it makes a lot of sense. Once you get some stuff, you realize the stuff's kind of a burden.
Yep. You got to store a boat. You got to winterize a boat. You got to store the RV in it. And the thing about it is that the stuff doesn't really matter, but it's what you do with the stuff. So you learn to prioritize like things that you're really good at. Like, hey, I like to go boating, right? But I don't want to winterize the boat. I don't want to store it all year. So, so we learned to rent a boat or something like that, and so, I mean, my philosophy is always, he who dies with the most stories wins. And so for me, I mean, if I had to have all the toys to make all the stories I want to make, I need like a 5-acre parcel of land to put everything, man. I tell you, like But the thing about it is and this kind of ties back into the community that we build, right? I mean, you know, buddy's got a boat, go spend time with him on the boat. He spends time with you at the property. You know, you do that, and it becomes a networking deal, right? I mean, we can watch old movies on how everybody came together and everybody was, you know, sitting around drinking champagne and wine. It was a networking event. I mean, we're doing that in the same aspect, but the side note of it is you've got the family there. And while I'm thinking of that, you know, I've used those times too. If you're trying to really get to know somebody as well, you want to talk about peeling layers of the onions back. That onion layer comes back really fast when they're around their family. And so if you're if you're looking to get into business with somebody, or you're looking to do something with somebody, you bring them around their family. I mean, that, you know, it's
actually, I love that, bro, because you earlier were saying the 5 acres, and then it was like, we can get to this point where we're working on ourselves and we want to make sure we don't lose the family. Well, what happens is a lot of times these owners may include it in his seasons where we have our values. I like to put it in values. So like for me, I have my top 3 values. I love building and creating impact for humanity. And that's entrepreneurship for me, and building teams. I love family, and just family, which is my daughters. And then I love just creating an aligned life of like focusing on the aspects of me that are ascending to a greater being. And those are my top 3 values. And if any of those values are making one of the other values not stay a value, then that value is not in integrity. So if work is not supporting family and an ascended life, then work is shit. And I'm not okay with this anymore. And so I tried to like put them on a scale and pay attention that they're all getting the love they deserve. Because to come full circle is one of the biggest things I see in business owners and entrepreneurship is we can short circuit living a great life. So you make all this money, you create all these things because you focus on that value. And so you're a wonderful person and you've made it. But your family is just shit.
Well, and at the same time too, when you're building a business, right, you're selling your company. If it's day one and you started that company and you go out to the first customer, the customer goes, "How you doing?" "Oh, business is great," right? Everybody says that, whether it's great or it's not, you know. And that's the thing though, is business is great. We're already selling that aspect because we want them to think that everything's good. And so that facade that we build as business owners starts from day one, you know, and then believe it or not, like it does filter back into the family side. And so, but when you can, and granted, I mean, that's part of the grit, that's part of the start and everything, but there's definitely that part where eventually, you know, it has to be great. Family has to be great. All those 3 values that you're talking about, because if it's not, that whole facade that we put on, people see through it pretty quick, you know?
I would say actually, because I would think, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, all these different companies, you could hide a lot of those things, but and people did, right? And I'm sure they do now, but I feel like we're in such, on the aspect of communication, social media, friendships, just like you said, if we have these small circles, I'm going to know what's going on with you guys, and authentic wise, right? And so people will see through that very, very quickly. Now we've got AI and all this other stuff that is, we're putting content out or talking about X, Y, and Z for family. If it's not real, people know, like, oh, yeah, they'll eat right through it.
Oh, yeah.
And I just don't think business can be done any other way now. I think it has to be very straightforward. Even if people don't understand the situation, you still are straightforward saying, this is where things are at, but they're going to know if there's a problem.
Yeah. Even within your team, transparency breeds momentum. So if you're trying to hide your numbers from your team so no one knows how much money you're making, you're missing out on more money.
Yeah.
Because your team could be on like this vision on a greater level if they know where we're aiming. I want to know, when was your moment, like the biggest moment, we don't have to pick a specific business, when everything just like was breaking and you had to figure out who you were going to be and kind of choose to like just allow, or you're going to do whatever it takes to figure out how to to solve this and not just allow the decimation of what you built?
Yeah. Man, I could probably go over two different stories, but I mean,
Frame it so that we can really give some insight to someone who's currently like in one of these seasons right now.
Okay.
And when your experience, your knowledge of what it feels like to get through, and then the knowing of like, this is where we can go to. And like, I know it because I've done it. I just know when I've been in those moments and people like yourself have shared those with me, it's been transformative. And I think, yeah, I mean, someone who's already done it is great to hear from.
No, I mean, I'd probably say the one that most people could probably relate to. You know, funding's always a big thing, right? I mean, we believe so much in whatever we do that we just believe everybody else should believe. We walk up and we tell them, say, hey man, that's a good idea, and they're like, yeah, but I want to see the numbers. I don't worry about the numbers. Come on, trust me. You know, and for me it was claiming bankruptcy though. Trying to think when that was. That was about the time, I think it was 2008 when the whole crash and everything was going on. You know, and it was more than just a personal, I don't want to claim bankruptcy, I accepted the debt, this and that. But yeah, it was that moment when I had to sign papers. You know, it was a personal side, it was a business side. I had put people in the position that hadn't made the best decisions, and I hadn't overseen what they were doing. I had not managed my cash flow correctly. A lot of things, a lot of boxes that I can look back on and check on, right? And I think the hardest thing was the idea of failure. You know, the idea of failure at that point. I mean failure, right? I mean, there's failures in the way of like, I've got to kind of put a pause on the business and go take a job and get some more funding and, you know, kind of keep the business going on the side. You know, that's a level of failure. But I mean, this is like rock bottom failure. Like when you've got to, you know, give up everything you own, everything just goes away.
You lost the championship.
I lost the championship, the team. I mean, and that's when, you know, that's when you hit rock bottom. You know, you start thinking like, man, can I do this again? Will I do it again? Maybe I'll just go work for somebody. It's got to be easier. Yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. And, you know, and I think what I would say upon that though is that wasn't, I mean, that at the time that was rock bottom, but man, that was like the best learning lesson I ever experienced though. You know, and I don't know. I mean, I think definitely it's one of those things that's where your true grit is trial. You know, I mean, can you hit rock bottom and can you build again? Because, I mean, we live in this great country, right? I mean, where we have the opportunity. I own companies that are in, you know, like in Mexico and stuff, where bankruptcy isn't even an option. But we also look at it from this standpoint too. Borrowing money isn't always an option over there. You know, borrowing money here is pretty easy, right? I mean, for Americans and things like that. And so borrowing money comes up with the chance that you're going to claim bankruptcy, that you're going to fail. But being able to acknowledge and realize this is what I did wrong, this is what I'm going to do better, and I'm going to rebuild and go from that standpoint. Yeah, that's hard. I mean, that's, and I'm not even talking like telling everybody, you know, like, hey, we claim bankruptcy. Why'd you lose your car? Oh, I claim bankruptcy. You know, that part isn't even hard. It's more of like an internal side because the mindset.
You almost put on an outfit that you never wanted to put on, and you're like, I don't want to put this on.
No.
This isn't me. And so there's like a denial, like, and then you're like, well, shit, it is me. So there's like a story of who would do that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I hear you.
Yeah.
And I can see it. So when, the moment where things are just obliterated and we've proven we are a failure. I'm describing mine, not yours.
Oh no, there was some proving of failures on my side too.
And so when you get to this point where like I see my flaws at their greatest zoom level, just fully zoomed in, and the camera's not moving. It's just staying right here.
Yep.
And it feels like everyone is watching.
But
You spoke to it, but like, you can't buy this. This is just like, you can't buy the understanding of being a parent. It's not possible, and I couldn't sell it to you. You can't buy this, because once you've been down in that hole and you're like, shit, we're not getting out of the hole. And then you like sit with it and it sucks, and you just are in the suck, and then you're in the suck, and then it's shitty, and then you're like, okay, no more. Now what? That is the gift. Like, I wouldn't trade it for anything. We can empathize, we can understand, we can do bigger, I think the biggest thing is I can empathize with reality when things aren't good. And because like, if we're going to become whatever we're going to become when we die, if I'm going to be a master of universes, I better understand that. So entrepreneurship just feels like it's the turbos and the game genie and all this cheat codes. This is like, I'm just so grateful that this is what I'm doing, because it seems like it benefits a lot of becoming a great human and like learning about yourself.
Yeah.
Well,
I think too, it's also important too that people that are getting into it as well realize that it's okay to fail.
yes.
I mean, that was the one thing that really helped me coming out of it was, we talked earlier about like who's on that pedestal that we're looking up to, right? And I mean, name anybody that's out there, name Trump, name Bill Gates. You think their first companies, the first company they started was a success? Hell no. And if you really look into it, right? I mean, they talk about all the good, or you hear about all the good. They don't, but if you read the books and you read, listen to some of the ideas and podcasts, that's where it's all at. I mean, they talk about it. It's just, that's not the thing that everybody sees. Everybody sees is that facade. The business is, I mean, look at SpaceX, right? I mean, I think I saw the other day it was like worth $542 billion, but it was bankrupt at one point in time. Nobody talks about that.
So that's what you acquire.
Yep.
You acquire the knowing that you can fail.
Yep.
And failure is required to win.
Yep. And I think accepting that, knowing that, you make the motion of flipping the coin over, knowing that you could flip that coin over and there's still another side. That's the most important thing, knowing that, and I'm not saying everybody's going to go through it, but if you go through it and coming out of it though, that right there will set you up for all the future success. Not saying that the rest is all going to be success, but you're going to know how to deal with that failure because you've already experienced it and it's in the rearview mirror.
I like the idea though is again, you made the gesture, you pointed out that it was flipping the coin, and I'd say that when you get to that rock bottom, and obviously there's things going on in my life that I did a few bottoms that lasted a while and some highs and lows, right? But at that point, the battle that I think happens in the mindset is the choice. The choice is to flip the coin. So if for a different perspective, we come back and say, okay, so if the villain and the hero both had horrible things happen to them, what did either one choose? Well, the villain chose to go and do bad things and get the revenge. The hero chose to go, oh no, I learned this. I'm going to go help somebody else and go do the next thing. But it was that choice of, I'm actually going to flip the coin and figure out what I need to do now instead of just dwelling.
I'll even take that to one more level. So because I love what you said, the villain and the hero. And so then it's, what are the aspects of both of these parts of me that create the full me? Because the villain is okay with failing. The villain is okay with people not liking them. What I'm not okay with in the villain side of me is being a straight up asshole. But what I am okay with is not being concerned with what you think of me. Because then I'm inspiring you and I don't care if you're inspired either. And so then the hero has some things I don't want to do too, because sometimes the hero needs to be the hero and there's like this weird energy, but I still want to be all of that. Yeah. I don't know if you followed that.
No, I definitely get you. I think I just feel like it's in that point. Are you going to make a choice that will help others along with yourself, or are you just going to be the victim and sit in it? And I think that it's good to know your good and evils, right? But to say, okay, I also see a lot of heroes that if you look at even their backstories or even the things they do, they're kind of assholes.
That's what I mean. And that's why when you label villain and hero, there's bullets underneath those labels that actually exist in the most elevated version of all the aspects. Because then there's even savior and and you're saving people, like that's pretty gross, but but there's a lot of really beautiful aspects in that you could do as well. But the main word I heard what you said was choice. And so what I have come to find over the past 5 to 6 years, I think it's been really in the light, is everything in life comes to, am I in choice or am I in robot mode?
Nope.
And so when I'm in robot mode, I might do a lot of things that I don't actually want to do, and I might not get the outcomes I want. So reclaiming choice in your marriage. I choose to be with you, not because you are my wife. I choose because I want this. And I require you to try to aim for that too, so that we want this.
Yep.
And the business, I'm not doing the business because I have to keep it in business. I'm doing it because I choose to create a change in humanity and an impact in my employees. When choice goes away, that's when things get hard.
Well, I think too, I mean, I look back on the times, when I did have bankruptcy and stuff, what were my goals at that point in time, right? I mean, you look back and you're what were my goals? My goals were money. I mean, we all start this because it's money, right? We want the stuff, we want the status, we want to be able to pay our bills and not have to think about it. It's all money driven, right? And what kind of flipped on my side was realizing that money was a tool. It wasn't something to flash out there that hey, I got the money. It was, what are you doing with that tool? We talked about memories. It's about building the memories. It's about doing that stuff. And I think one of the things I realized too is during that bankruptcy, I mean, my drive was money. And you talked about the three aspects of, family and life and personal, and, family and business and personal. Well, none of my focus was on money, and I figured that money would take care of the rest.
Nice.
So, I found too, sometimes in my experience and in my story is that, I mean, some of the worst times, you put in all the work, you're putting in 200% of yourself, and you're why is it not turning out? My focus is off. That comes always afterwards. But man, sometimes I think if you're just sitting there and you're why am I putting all this effort in and it's still not working out? It might be that your focus is off.
Yeah.
You might have the intention that you're trying to do good for people, but if you're not genuinely doing good, or like you said, employees, one of the things I really strive for is pushing my employees to do good, pushing my employees to, succeed in life. And I've noticed that when that happens and then they do well, man, it's, I mean, the simplest thing, right? If the employees are happy and, they care about the company, that they're branded, it's like a cow that doesn't have a choice to get branded. These are employees that are choosing to get branded.
They bleed the company colors.
They do. They bleed the company. And you would think, customers would think oh, this guy owns part of the company.
100.
He just, he's branded himself. This is what he believes. He believes in the dream that I have, the passion that I have, and he's taking it forth. And I think that part, is something, we don't even talk about too, but I mean, that's the part that we don't get paid. It benefits us in a specific financial, way, but from the big part, man, that's the time, it's kind of when you see your kids make a choice, right? You've taught them say no to strangers, and then they have the choice to not talk to that stranger. And you're it's a proud dad moment, right? That's a proud employer moment, and I think that's kind of some things as you grow, you go from being super stoked that I closed the deal or that I made the money or something to now the stages of business are proud that my employees are doing good. I'm proud that my employees are taking the initiative. That's kind of the stage of where you go.
Or you're involved in their financial growth, and that they're buying the new house, or about this thing, or you're involved in this aspect of how they show up in the world, and they can't speak to their problems, but you create a container and a requirement that we speak to our problems, and they no longer have this inside of them, and they're a new person because of your workplace. Energy, I think, is the largest currency. And Harvard did a study. I heard this 15 years ago, so I may not be saying it exactly right, but we get paid with money. We get paid with accolades. Way to go. Everyone, Scott crushed it. Give Scott, and some people really like to be paid that way. And we get paid with internal growth and a container of safety where we up level in our life. And if you're only paying with currency, you're going to have so much turnover in your employees and you just don't take off. And I can tell you get it. And like, not only it pays us, like you said, the business becomes stale when you don't care about the people.
Yeah.
Or the money.
Yeah.
If you only care about the money.
Well, it becomes a job though, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Is that not employee mindset versus entrepreneur mindset? And I think really, and I'm just thinking of this right now, but I think when that happens between the two is that the employee mindset, even when you're self-employed, can be money. Well, that's your perception. But if it's the entrepreneur mindset, it's to say, wait a second. What is my perception? What can I see from outside? How can I see that this employee is here? Their perception is money. But the other end of it is to say, okay, well, how can I look at this from 30,000 feet, which you notice where now money is a tool to help me with everything else.
Yeah.
Instead of a wall you can't get over, let's take all the bricks out and build something.
Yep.
It's so, cause that's what we get to gift as the owners. And I think the reason, and you could probably attest to this, the reason I have had a lot of employees stick around for a long time and like bleed those colors is because you care. And there's still a line of, like, I don't think I always understood the boundary line in that caring too. In my earlier years, you can overcare. And so there's like a boundary of like sincere, like all caring, but like past this, it's you. And that's empowering.
Yeah.
And I think you have to go through all these pieces of caring for your people to understand what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Like you can abuse yourself in your caring for your employees as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, and they, you know, and you got to be willing to really, you know, you get to know the employees, but you also, you know, you really, like you said, you care about where they're at and everything, but there's also the side of it though too, where you're learning from them as well. I think that part where, like I try to never take the role of like, I'm the boss, you got to do what I do.
Yeah.
You know what I say? And I've worked on a lot of things where, I mean, posture, how you move your hands. I mean, I got Mexican and Italian in my blood, man. I talk with my hands. I'm big and loud and everything. So sometimes you got to read the room. You know, you got to walk in, shoulders small hand movements, lowered volume. You learn those things so that you can get across and you allow that person to share with you. You know, and because that's the thing though too. I mean, if you can empower them to teach you something, and they know that their voice is heard. Man, I tell you, and that's like the coolest moment.
I was trying to find this word as we were talking about that, because as I talk about, you know, perception, I kept trying to think of what the opposite of this was, or as a level between the two that you're talking about, where you can see the other things, was perspective. Perspective is being able to stand back and do that and say, I know that I can learn from that employee. I know that if I do this, this will happen. And that changes that perception, and now you're in perspective mode.
And then processes and a very strong foundation that has all the love, pay attention to cash flow, pay attention to CAC, pay attention to everything, has that container. It allows for what you guys are talking to at the uttermost level. Because what I've found from my experience is when the container isn't structured all the way and everyone doesn't actually know what we're trying to do in each little like nuance that happens, it's open it for interpretation. And then what happens is when people are giving insight, it actually isn't received very well because there's too much insight on too many things. There's too many unknowns. And so then people don't feel like they're heard because there's too many things to be heard on. And we actually all can't be creative because then we're not going to choose a thing.
Wow.
And so we do have to create a container that's polished enough to where they want to be heard and we want to hear them as well. Because I've noticed does that make sense? You get like, you don't have enough processes. You're like, sorry, dude, like, we're not going to do it that way. And it's because they don't even know what your process is.
So can I ask a question kind of to both of you, and maybe kind of just go around with this? But I think for a lot of people listening, again, the last 10 years on social media from entrepreneurs has been, everybody starts a business. Everybody does this. Everybody does X, Y, and Z. It's the best thing that you can do. But as we've talked about these different stories of all these things happening, it also is what we talked about, being at the bottom of the barrel and the grind that goes along with that. I'd love to know what your guys' grind is, meaning how hard is it behind the scenes, and what did you have to do to say, okay, I'm in the bottom of the barrel. I made a choice. I'm walking up these steps. What does this grind look like now?
I love that, especially as we're wrapping up. You're in the bottom of the hour. Let's talk about that. And I'll actually let Scott start, but like what?
Oh man, you got to put me on the spot. I thought I had 5 minutes to think about that. Bottom of the barrel and all that. I mean, I think it kind of means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. But for me, I mean, when it's been the hardest and everything like that, and where we're going with it, it's like, well, I mean, you got to think back to what your reasoning was. What's my why question, and I only know the why question because I went to some, make your business better class or .com thing or something like that, but really, I mean, what was your grind, your grit, and what was the reason you woke up in the morning in the first place? And it literally comes down to the fact that, I wanted to put my family in a different place than I grew up in. That was the why. And so, and then it became, I wanted the people that surround me to be in a better place, and I don't take that as like a burden, right? I mean, there's a certain level of responsibility that I put back on them. I don't take it as like, I got to carry all of you guys, you know what I mean? Like, you guys are carrying me, I'm carrying you. This is a joint team. There's like a meme that's out there where there's, it says, what kind of boss are you? There's a guy in his chariot and he's whipping, the perception of the employees, right? Or there's the employee, or there's the boss that's in the front of the line dragging the chariot with them. And that's kind of the mindset that I'm talking about, though, is when you're, when you're able to, transcribe to your guys that this is what we're doing together and we're doing it. That's the why for me. Seeing things get better. It goes past the point of, whatever it is that I want. But really just comes down to, making things better. And I relate to that, this well enough. I mean, I don't want to be the top person at the mountain, because I'll tell you what, I think it'd be pretty lonely. For me, I want people that are successful with me that I like to hang out with. If we do that at the end of the day, and I know that sounds like all, planned and speeched out and whatever, and like, oh, this is corny as fuck. Like, no, that's the idea behind it is like, I want to be able to call Chad and say, Chad, really, like, what are you doing Friday? I got some like cool plane tickets. We're going to Australia. And if Chad's like, oh man, he's like, I'd totally go, but I'm broke. Like, I don't want that. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see Chad doing good so that I can call him and like hang out with Chad. So let's go do
that is so true.
And that's the thing, it's that whole corny thing where everybody always said like, oh, I don't want to be the one on the top. No. I mean, like, I legitimately want people to succeed.
We can go fast alone, but we can go far together.
It's a good saying.
I think that's how you say it.
Wait, do you have that written on your hand?
Right here is this.
Yeah. So
that's t-shirt worthy.
I love what you said. And from my perspective, I think I'd almost say a lot of the things you said, and the grind behind the grind, I would probably think more around, because I actually enjoy grinding. So it's when I'm having blockage and stagnant, I don't want to choose this stagnant thought behavior. Go away. Why do I feel so stagnant? Why do I not want to work? I want to work. That's what I hate. And so I've just, from those experiences, have really created focus on what to do when this happens, and how to acknowledge that my body and I have desires and I'm not a robot, but I also want to grind, but I don't want the hustle grind. I want the movement. I want to make things happen, but I don't want to be easy, but I want ease. Yeah. If that makes sense. And so what I have found is the more I listen, the more I can get back to grinding. So I'm just pushing through the grinding. I usually am very unproductive. My ideas are poor. I'm stuck and I can't figure it out. It feels like a lot. And then if I'm like, you know what, I need 15 minutes. In fact, I am checking out for the next hour, and then I'll start again. And then I get way more done. So I think just being real with yourself, but you need what you said to do that. Because if you don't have a why, you don't know what you're doing, that also could be counterintuitive and go down some other vicious cycle of just being, not a loser, but loser versions of ourselves.
Well, and this is what I used to tell all my employees is that, it's the idea that I've said this to you the last little while and to a lot of people, but when we all have ADHD, and then as a business owner, you're jumping around, there are those times that I think you get to the bottom of the barrel and we get to this spot where I have to keep telling myself, out of your head, into your hands. Doesn't mean that, yes, physically it needs to leave my hands, but a lot of times it is the action. It's I can think of a million things. I can set up a million ideas, but as soon as I take action on it, that's when the difference comes in. And I think that's what I've been trying to capture this last little while is to say, okay, my brain's going everywhere, out of my head, into my hands. And then with the idea with the why is that as soon as I learned my why, and I still know what my why is, it was the how.
Uh-huh.
So with employees, I'd say, that the why is your family or this situation that happened to you. What is your how now? What is the how that enables you to go do that? And how do you go from being jumbled in your brain with everything happening to going, oh, I'm actually going to put something to paper? Because I think at one point in a portfolio, I was managing 8 different companies at the same time. I thrived in chaos. But then as things started to change, my brain couldn't keep up anymore. It was now what I need to do. I need my hands. And that's where I struggled with.
I completely agree. And I'm going to add. So what I was referring to for me is sometimes when I'm using that, I haven't paused for a moment long enough and actually got 100% clear on like, what's my highest leverage activity right now that I maybe even am putting over there because I don't want to do it. And that's where this feeling comes. And so I agree, do. And then right before I do, if I'm having this feeling, it's like, all right, what actually needs to happen? And what if it happened would be just such a big change right now? And I just go do that. And then all of a sudden, like, working's easy. And maybe it was shitty for like 15 minutes rolling in, but then as soon as you like initiate the doing, like you said, it just like washes off. But when you sit and think, we used to say this knocking doors. The only thing worse than knocking doors is thinking about knocking doors.
I'll tell you what, you guys probably need a little bit of pie time. You were talking, you guys were all relating to what I call pie time though. Pie time for me is when you just go get a piece of pie. And it's only a piece of pie. It's not a whole pie. Yeah. Don't let them say the whole thing. Eat a piece of pie though, because everything comes into perspective. And this is the ADHD side. As I'm sitting there eating the pie, I'm thinking about what the whipped cream's made of, and is it cherry? Oh, is it out of a can? Oh man, I mean, there's so many things, right? It's occupied a lot of space in my brain. One piece of pie, believe it or not, and in my stomach too. But so I get going, and I'm thinking about this, and it gives me an opportunity to then realize that like, really all I got to do is just eat one piece of a pie at a time. It gives me a chance to talk to just a random person though, and it's amazing how much you could process or how much it puts it into perspective, like after everything's said and done, because really, I mean, like no matter what problem we're ever trying to solve, right? This goes back to when we were, 6 months old, we do little steps. So we never eat the whole pie. We eat pieces of the pie. And that's the same in business though. We sit down, we eat a piece of the pie, and at the same time, putting it all into relativity and everything like that, we need help getting the pie out of the counter and putting it in front of us, right? So it's one of those things, and I know it's kind of a weird metaphorical type thing or whatever.
No, but that's actually spot on.
That's what I call pie time. And pie time for me has evolved, salespeople say like you go down the best place that has pie, always has, that's how everything's going on in the little town or something like that. Yeah. But pie time for me is always that one thing where if I just can't, like you said, you just got so much going on and you're just like, man, I just got to sit down and eat a piece of pie.
It's wild. Like sometimes you're just like, all the things to do, can't do anything.
Yep. There you go.
So thank you, Jesus, Scott, for the metaphor.
I was going to say, that's God inspired. I'm
it
sure
is.
If you're diabetic, God's going to let you eat that piece of pie.
Well, not only that, what a way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
And the reason I made the joke is what I heard is you got to listen to your gut.
Yep.
And so if your gut is telling you, bro, break, listen.
Yep.
Don't fight yourself. We're already solving all the problems. Let's work together with this, because I believe a lot that my gut actually speaks to my brain. And so I'm going to steal that metaphor and use that.
Yep.
It's so fun to do these I've had like 19 versions of goosebumps when someone says something. Thanks for doing this today, guys.
Yeah, when this podcast goes live, if I see Grant Cardone steal my pie time, I'm going to trademark it right now.
Yeah.
He better take me on this thing to explain pie time. No. So I appreciate you letting me come and chat with you guys. So this has been cool. So
well, thanks everyone for watching our rad episode today on the Hatch Point, and until next time, we'll see you later.